Alex here. I'm just going to hijack the video for a moment to ask you all a couple of favours. Firstly, 1,000 subscribers is a huge milestone for any channel, and that's what I'm working towards at the moment. But it's really tough at the beginning, and so I need all of your help. If you like the channel, please subscribe, and also please get others who you think may like it to check it out too. Secondly, you may have heard from other video content that YouTube has recently changed something in the background, which is really hurting small creators like myself to get started. So if you do subscribe, please click the notification bell and be sure to select all under the bell icon, because this seems to be one of the things that YouTube has altered, meaning subscribers are not getting notifications of new content. I know I haven't seen some new notifications from videos from the channels that I follow. Anyway, that's everything. I'll let you get back to it, and I hope you enjoy the video that follows and have great modelling moments of your own. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Mann's Model Moments. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you the top detailing tools and materials for your plastic scale modelling. Stay till the end of the video though, because I have a bonus item that's just as important as everything else I'm going to mention here today, so you'll want to check that out. Just like my beginners and intermediate tools videos, which you can find linked here, if you've not seen them yet, I'm going to tell you what I personally use and recommend in each of the categories in the video and give you links to those products in the video description below, though they or equivalent products will be available from other retailers elsewhere in your country. So, with that aside, let's get into it, shall we? The first thing on my list are the easiest elements to implement in a model, though usually they are the most expensive, and these are resin detailing sets. These can be as small as a single ejection seat, all the way to complete internal bays, engine assemblies, and so on. They tend to be designed for a specific kit, since even the same type of aircraft or vehicle from different manufacturers will be dimensionally and structurally different, though it is sometimes possible to adjust things to fit between manufacturers. They tend to completely replace a kit element, often in the most easily accessible or visible areas, and this is why they're suitable for modelers with less experience. The drawbacks tend to be twofold. Firstly, they may not be the part you want for your chosen model, and secondly, as I mentioned previously, they can often be expensive, sometimes more expensive than the whole kit that they are detailing. Handling resin is also different to plastic, and it also comes with some potential health implications, so you need to be careful when cutting or sanding resin components because the dust is quite toxic. Still, if you're looking for a big boost to the detail of the models you're making and you're prepared to pay for that, they're a really good option. Photo-etched metal detail sets range from very small generic components, like seatbelts, through to entire interior and exterior detailing sets. Some sets need very little skill to use, others require quite a bit and are helped with specialist tools, which can be very expensive, but Photoetch has the advantage of being able to add nice details to fiddly areas like instrument panels and seat belts, or those that are difficult to reproduce in injection moulding at a small scale, like tank engine grills. And they do this with minimum effort, but for larger parts it can look rather two-dimensional, since you are dealing with mostly flat metal. Some kits today actually include Photoetch parts as standard in the main kit, and they're often the first mixed media components newer models will deal with. As such, you'll be using superglue, like you will with resin, which comes, again, with its own advantages and disadvantages. Using Photoetch can also be fiddly, and larger pieces can be difficult if you want crisp bends and angles. It is possible to use pliers, tweezers, or other tools to bend Photoetch, but if you're going to be doing a lot of this type of detailing set, then it's probably worth investing in a Photoetch bending tool. These are relatively expensive items, but they're also a one-off purchase, so a good long-term investment if you're going to be using Photoetch parts a lot. It's also perfectly possible to get along without one if you're not using a lot of Photoetch, so this really depends on how much you go down this path. In a future video, I will actually show you how to make your own Photoetch bending tool if you don't want to spend that much, but even so, it's still a reasonable investment. When you're making a model, you're frequently given optional parts, either for different configurations, weapons loadouts, or vehicle subtype. The parts you don't need, you should keep, because you never know when they might come in handy. Need some extra missiles for a loadout you want to model? Well, see if you have some spares before thinking about buying or making more. Likewise, starting from a spare base component is often easier than starting from scratch, so keep all of those clipped off pieces safe. I find one of those little multi-drawer storage bins is a great way of keeping things organised, so you can find what you want quickly. If you're looking to model aircraft, scribing and riveting tools are a good investment. Producing smooth surfaces on aircraft usually requires sanding, and it's easy to remove kit detail doing that, requiring restoration of those panel lines and rivets. Other, especially older kits, will feature raised detail or no detail at all, and scribing panel lines and rivets adds to the overall look and authenticity of the model. The good thing here is that scribers are plentiful and cheap. From knife blades through to razor saws and dedicated tools, there are a lot of things that can scratch an appropriate line into plastic. I use a mixture of tools, typically a scriber and razor saws, to produce the look that I want. As for rivets, there are a number of tools to produce these in different scales, but they are essentially little spiked wheels with different numbers of teeth, depending on the scale and spacing of the rivets. Now, producing straight scribed lines and rivets is one thing, but what if you need an oval or a rounded rectangle? This is where scribing templates come in, and these are usually a harder material, often steel, in a thin sheet with the shape cut out, allowing you to trace the shape with your scribing tool. And again, these are a good investment if you're going to be doing a lot of this type of detailing. Plastic card, rod, tubes, and other extrusions are relatively cheap, available in an almost infinite range of sizes and thicknesses, and can be cut, shaped, and glued in exactly the same way as your base kit. This makes them fantastic materials to make parts for your models. This can be very basic, for example, just blanking off a see-through hole in a cheap model, to pretty advanced. I mean, you can literally construct an entire kit from these materials if you want, which some people do. It's called scratch building. It's a lot of work, obviously. Now, if you can't easily or quickly find the exact piece of plastic rod you need, sprue is the gift that keeps on giving. Not only can you dissolve it in a solvent to create sprue goo, but heated and stretched, it can create thin rods or whip aerials for no extra cost. You've already paid for it. It takes a bit of practice to do and create reliable, consistent results, or just the result that you want, but it does have the distinct advantage of cost effectiveness. Using a heat gun is usually preferable to a naked flame, as the last thing you want to do is start burning plastic in your home. So this is a case of do as I say, not as I do. Wire is great for simulating, well, wires for one thing, but any cables, tubes and conduits found in your chosen modelling subject. Basically, anything that isn't easy to injection mould, creating resin, photoetch or plastic rod, is likely to be best represented with wire. You can use any wire, from electrical copper wire and solder to purpose-sold lead wires in specific diameters. They all have their place. Lead wire is easy to form and work with, but obviously has some toxic effects if you start sucking on it, so don't do that. Copper wire is freely available, but tends to be harder to work with, though multi-stranded wire works great for cables in AFV models. Now, I used to use fishing line to represent radio wires on 1/72nd scale model aircraft, until I found out about elastic thread. Fishing line is great for scale representation, but even superglue has a hard time fixing it, making it a real pain to work with. It also has no elasticity, so if it comes loose anywhere or isn't glued right, it just sits there and detracts from any kind of illusion of authenticity. Elastic thread, on the other hand, by its nature does have some elasticity, meaning you can secure one end and then put a tiny amount of stress on it whilst gluing the other, which gives you sag-free results every time. Some parts, especially on smaller scale models, are difficult to represent with plastic, and are really fiddly to create with photoetch or other means. A big category here are guns, whether machine guns on aircraft or tank barrels. Metal rods, tubes and barrels all add a level of detail and rigidity unavailable to us from most other alternatives. Now, these can be expensive if you're looking at aftermarket metal tank cannons, for instance, in larger scales, or they can be free. The precision applicator from your cement, when it's all used up, can have a new lease of life representing gun barrels or pitot tubes on models in the future. Now, if you don't have any spare tubes lying around, you can buy brass tubing in various different diameters, internal and external, for whatever item you're trying to represent. What I've used more than anything else here is metal foil, specifically the thick foil found on things like wine bottle caps. It's a great starting point for making your own things like seatbelts if you don't want to go for photoetch for whatever reason. It's also good for things like removed before flight tags, open panels, damaged armour, whatever else your imagination can dream up. In addition to metal foil, there are also various grades of mesh available. This is just an aluminium mesh used for body repair on cars, whereas this is a smaller scale copper mesh. I got this from a craft store, but it's suitable for using in metal grills on all kinds of scales. Some small items on kits like aerials work best with something very flexible or something very rigid, depending on the subject. And where you have those easy to break off items, usually at the front of an aircraft, you have various aftermarket accessories like this. There are also other white metal pieces available, especially older detail sets, and for things like weighted wheels. After the last category, which included a lot of different things all in the same bag, this one is a bit more niche, but it's very affordable, and that's cigarette papers. Now, I'm not espousing anybody to take up smoking, but cigarette papers are very cheap. They are great as tarpaulins, covers, and cloth. They don't tear that easily when they're damp. They've got good scale thickness, and there isn't that large fibrous detail that looks odd like there is on tissue or normal paper. So you can dampen them with water to make them conform realistically, and provided you're careful, they don't tear that easily. Filling larger gaps with sprue goo can be tiresome and problematic. It does contain the solvent after all, which dissolves plastic, but fortunately there is modelling putty to help here. 2-part putties like Milliput or Green Stuff have minimal or no shrinkage, a reasonably long working time, maybe 20 to 60 minutes depending on the make and the blend, and can be sculpted and shaped with tools to create anything you want. It was, and still is in some cases, used by sculptors to create minis before 3D modelling programs came to prominence. It doesn't affect plastic at all, so you can use it liberally without fear of deforming your model with solvent, and is readily available all over the world. Casting duplicate or alternative parts is a nice way to detail models, and you're not infringing anyone's copyright if you're careful about how you do it. Depending on how you are doing it, this can be easy or complex. Now, I've created 2-part rubber moulds to cast my own white metal bombs in the past, but there are also simple one-piece thermoplastics that you can use for press moulding for surface features and materials with the modelling putty I just described, sort of a blister or a wheel hub, for example, and they're great for making, broken items for dioramas, for instance. Now, this bonus item here is really important, and it can often be overlooked when you're new to the hobby and just excited to get into your model, and that's research. Whether you're modelling a real-world vehicle, painting a bust, or creating something for a game like Warhammer 40k, researching either your subject or detail around the kind of thing you're trying to create is really important to create a convincing replica. Fortunately for us, research today is easier than ever. Many museums have extensive pictures, walkarounds, or even 360-degree panoramas or virtual environments that make things like detailing interiors or exteriors much easier than when you had to rely on physical books or actually going and seeing the thing for yourself. So in summary, the top 10 detailing items to really get into adding super detail for your models are: resin sets, they're diverse, super detailed, but can be expensive. Photoetch sets, they're great for the more two-dimensional scale pieces. Spare parts, don't throw out any of those option parts from old kits, collect those together. Scribing and riveting tools, some you'll already have, like razor saws. Plastic sheet, rod and tube, including do-it-yourself stretch sprue. Wire, line and thread, copper or lead wire, fishing line or elastic thread, take your choice. Metal items, ranging from simple scavenged metal foil to machined cannon barrels. Cigarette papers, simple, cheap, effective. Modelling putty is cheap, it's very versatile. And finally, moulding materials, a bit more niche, but invaluable when you need them. And most important of all, remember to do your research. Making super detailed kits is best when you're adding the right things, especially if you're modelling a specific subject or an individual vehicle. Spend the time to really know what you're trying to create before you start off. It'll repay dividends in saved time and in the end result. My next videos coming out will be covering the top weathering items to use in your projects, and I'll also revisit the first kit build of the Tamiya Sea Harrier to see how we can improve it by applying some of the things I've talked about in these top 10 videos. So to make sure you'll get notified about these, please subscribe to the channel and click the All drop down under the notification bell.
That's all for this instalment of Mann's Model Moments. Please like, subscribe and share this video if you enjoyed it. It's the best way of helping me to grow the channel and produce more content like it. With that, I hope you have plenty of modelling moments of your own, and I look forward to welcoming you on the next video.